Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to KP classes. Today we are here to discuss about NATA 2023 question paper consisting of the cognitive drawing test questions. So we are here to discuss about the questions related to drawing, okay, the drawing aptitude, not the architecture aptitude or general aptitude, but primarily about the drawing questions. So I hope everybody has subscribed to our channel and also downloaded our app, which is KT Classes Exam Prep app. It is going to be really very helpful for most of the students who are preparing for their NATA 2023 examination. So now we are left with two attempts, the attempt 2 and the attempt 3. So let's get started, guys. So here we have on the screen the first question that had come in the exam related to your cognitive drawing test. So here image is shown to the students and they are supposed to, what is the question? The question says, choose any four most appropriate visual or design attribute that can be commonly observed in the given image, right? So image has been shown to you, and again it is again a very common question to ask about attributes, the visual or the design attribute that comprises of the following elements of design, principle of design, color theory, gestalt theory. So there are certain topics related to the theory, okay, which talks about the visual quality or the visual or the design attribute of any particular image or design. It can be a building, it can be an object, it can be a painting. So remember that visual attribute and visual aspects can be based on a building, right? They can show you an image of a building or a natural object like a flower or an animal or a painting or any photograph, right? And they can base those questions on the image that they are sharing with you. So the option over here are distortion, analogous, depth, asymmetry, repetition, verticality, lightness, and emphasis, right? So let's see what the answer is. So the right options are B, C, E, F, G, which is analogous, depth, repetition, verticality, and lightness. And it says that you have to choose any four, right? And marks will be awarded only if all the answers are right. So you have to pick up all the four right options, and we have 5 options over here which are correct, and you can choose any of them. So we'll just look at the options and see why they are correct. So first is analogous. So students, if you are studying and preparing for NATA 2023 examination, and if you are following our videos, if you are taking appropriate classes and everything, so you would know that an analogous is a particular color scheme, right? So analogous is a color scheme where the colors which are consecutive to each other in the color wheel, right? So when you pick up colors which are consecutive to each other in the color wheel, they form the analogous color scheme. We'll see what the color wheel is, right? In our presentation, in the following few questions, we will also see the example of the color wheel, right? So here the color scheme, we are talking about the color scheme which is analogous. Then there is depth. As we can see, there is a feeling of perspective or depth. It's not a 2D image, right? You can see that there is a ground, there is a perspective, and something is happening in the background, right? Then there is repetition, like the lines, those lines, the vertical lines. There is verticality also because mostly the elements are vertical in nature, and it is being repeated, they are not being repeated after a specific interval. The interval is very random, but still there is repetition. And we can see it's the very dominating factor over here. Then you have lightness, right? Verticality and lightness. So you can see the light and the play of light and dark, right? You can understand that there is a light source in the back, right? And how the shadows are forming and everything. So this is how you have to analyze a particular visual and you have to come up with the right option. Okay. So the next question was, again, it's the same sort of a question. It falls under the same category. In the previous image, you were shown a painting, right? And over here, right now, you are shown a 2D composition, right? All our students should also know how to address these images. Like, is it a landscape? Is it a photograph? Is it an image of a building? Or is it a 2D composition or a 3D composition? So being architecture student, you need to know these technical terms and we need to know how to address these particular images. So again, the question says that you have to choose any four design attributes which are suitable to the given composition. So there's a composition right in front of you and you have to pick four right options. So the options are focus, divergent, texture, contrast, movement, repetition, foreground and background, and darkening. Okay. So all of these are either principle of design. The options are either principle of design or elements of design, right? And if you are thorough with the principles and elements of design, then it will again become very easy for you to pick up the right option. So the options are number one, focus. Okay, A is focus. Now, why do you think you have focus over here? So, can we see there is a color red which is standing out, right? So, whenever anybody is looking at this particular image, the first thing that hits our eyes are this the color red that's creating a sort of focus and compelling a viewer to first uh, look at that particular part. Then we have texture. As you can see, there's a little bit of texture. So what is texture? Texture is the tactile quality of any particular surface. Now, in when we are looking at something on our screen or we are reading about some texture, we are looking at a photograph. So that time we are not really talking about the tactile quality, but we are talking about the visual quality. How visually are we creating a particular texture? So that is right there in front of you. The element of texture is also present. Then the element of contrast, a very high contrast like red is there, black, white. So of course contrast is there. And there's another thing that we see is again repetition. So we see that these elements are being repeated at a certain interval. So definitely there is repetition, there is contrast, there is texture, and there is focus. Okay. So these were simple elements and principles of design. So you have to be thorough with all the elements and principle of design. And the best way to learn about elements and principle of design is not only knowing the proper definition of it, but also try and identify as much as possible. Look at as many pictures as possible. They can be part of some famous photographs by photographers. They can be paintings. They can be um, landscape, right? Or 2D compositions or 3D compositions. So these are the things that you have to keep looking at to identify. You have to question yourself. You have to read through the study material that you have to get a hang and to get to identify these elements and principles of design in a very easy and fluid manner. Okay, so here we have another image. Now, this image again is different from the previous one that we saw over here, right? So here we see that it was a 2D image, right? And now the image that we are looking at is 3D. Okay, it looks like a 3D form. And also try and find out what does it resonate, what is the meaning of this particular image. If you try and find it out, I'm sure you'll get a lot more, answers to these questions. So right now we are looking at the appropriate principles or elements of design. So the options are again analogous color, complementary color, fluidity, rhythm, symmetry, stability, contrast, and datum. Okay, so let's look at the answers. So the first thing is again in the first question, in the first image, we had seen the color scheme was analogous, right? But right now, this is not analogous. This is what? This is complementary. Now, how do we define complementary colors? Complementary colors are contrast colors that are opposite to each other on the color wheel. Okay, so we have the red and we have green, and green is right opposite the color red. So if you can recall the color wheel, we have the primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. These three colors are evenly distributed on the color wheel. So they form an equilateral triangle. And we have the blue and the yellow. And when you mix these two primary colors, you get green. And green lies right opposite to red. So you have to really memorize the color wheel. Okay, it's not that difficult. You can just look at it and you can keep that in mind. You can read about primary, secondary, and tertiary colors, and you can thoroughly read about different color schemes. Okay, so start with what are monochromes, what are achromatic, neutral shades, warm colors, cool colors, complementary, split complementary, triadic, tetradic. So there are so many color schemes that you have to be thorough with, and you should be able to quickly visually identify also these color schemes. Okay, so here the answer is, I'll quickly explain you the answer, which is complementary as they fall opposite to each other. Then next is stability, F, the option F, stability, contrast, and datum. Okay, so I'll explain you. Stability, definitely you can see the image and this particular form seems to be stable. It doesn't need any support and it's standing on its own, right? It definitely has contrast. So as I explained you about the complementary color is the same, right? Complementary means the contrasting color. So don't get confused if the two words come in the same option, right? So you can pick both because if it's complementary, then definitely it's contrast also because that's what it means. And that too means where a particular image or particular element follows a line, right? If you see there is a line which is being followed over here, if you could see my cursor over here, right? And rest of the elements are forming around it. So it creates a line, it creates a movement in a particular image or composition. So I hope you are getting all these questions and you're understanding, and I hope this is being extremely helpful for all you students. We will be coming with another live session for architecture aptitude, which is going to happen today at 5 o'clock. So do not miss it. And for students who by any chance could not attend the live class, they can always see the same recorded version on YouTube, right? So moving ahead, we have now, most of the students know which painting it is, because it's again one of the most famous, and you see it around. You see it on t-shirts, on there are so many digital recreation of this particular painting. So one important aspect is in the NATA examination, uh, we are seeing that a very, a chunk of fine arts questions are being asked. So you have to be thorough with some of the topics of fine arts as well. We are conducting live online classes for the same. In case you want to take up those classes with us, so you can always call on the numbers which are given in the link below. Okay, you can reach out to our counselors and you can join our classes for studying about NATA crash course. So this is a famous painting. The name is Starry Night, and which is by Vincent van Gogh. You should also know what were the other famous paintings by the same artist, and not only this artist, but artists from different genre, right? Like there is Impressionism. So you should know what is Impressionism. Who were the famous painters of Impressionism, right? Of that particular era. What was Impressionism all about? Then you should know about Renaissance era. In fact, we will be having an image right here in the following slides, which is related to the Renaissance era. Whether it's Renaissance, Cubism, um, classical, the modern art. So students, these are the questions which are related to your fine arts, which has been added. This is part of the new curriculum, as the NATA curriculum is very dynamic, and they keep adding new things to the cognitive design test. So it will be really helpful for students if they study these topics, right? Okay. So the next question, I think next question is very, very simple. It is about what is the emotion or attribute that is associated with the color brown. Now, a lot of times students come up with this particular doubt that how are we supposed to know what a particular color stands for. See, certain things are very universal, and if you have learned about the color psychology, then you would know what a particular color stands for, right? But this question is comparatively easy, and one of the most easy approach to identify what a color stands for is always see what its significance is in nature. So if we talk about the color red or orange, then what are the things significant in nature which is related to orange or yellow or red are, for example, fire, volcano, right? Or maybe flowers. So you can associate certain words or attributes from the nature to a particular color. So the options are neutral, formal, gloomy. So a lot of students might think that since brown is a neutral color, so maybe the option 1 is right. No, but the option C is right. Why is it right? Because it's earthy. Brown signifies the soil. It signifies the trunk of the tree, and it is also signifies rustic. So, for example, the trunk of the tree, it is it's not very smooth, or it is not very perfect. So it has a it has a very rustic feel to it, and it's part of the soil is brown in color. So the attribute or the emotion of the sturdy and rustic goes very well with the color brown. Sturdy, why? Because the trunk of the tree is sturdy, it supports the whole tree, and that's why we pick up that particular attribute. Moving ahead, but again, it is not necessary that every time the level of difficulty level will be the same. It might increase in the coming attempts of NATA. So you have to be prepared in terms of cognitive drawing test, in terms of architecture aptitude, in terms of your PCM. So the only way doing it is the more you practice, the more you study, the better you will perform, right? So the next question again, it is part of your color theory, and color theory is a very broad topic. We have covered color theory extensively in our live online classes, where we go deep into the elements and elements of different color schemes, tints, tones, and shades. What are RGB tones? What are CNYKs? All these things we go into complete detail of each and every aspect. So the answer to this particular question is in the 12 color wheel derives from the RGB color wheel. What is the color opposite to red? So the color opposite to red, as you all know, is green. We already discussed about it in one of the questions. And over here, I have also shown the color wheel also. And I would again repeat it for the students that you have to memorize and you have to know the placement of each and every color on the color wheel, how they are placed. You cannot randomly place the red and the blues and the yellows, thinking that okay, they are the primary colors. No, you always space them evenly and they form a equilateral triangle. Okay, if you are placing the red over here, you need to place it over here. You cannot change the spacing of the color, so please keep that in mind and you need to memorize this whole chart. Then the next question. Now this particular question is again based on from the topic of fine arts, and it directly uh, talks about a art or painting style. So identify the appropriate style of painting in the given picture. So you need to see a picture for a while and then look at the options. Now, if you have again studied different art forms, different painting styles, then it becomes very easy for you to identify what it is. So this particular, the options which are being given to us is drip painting, action painting, pointillism, and gore arts. Now, just don't focus on the right option. So the right option is action painting. But don't just focus on the right option. Always try and read about the other different options as well. See what they stand for. See what gore art stands for. Who started it? Its name after which famous painter? What is the imagery of these paintings? So each and every painting, each and every style will have a different imagery. Some will have the imagery of a particular animal or a human imagery in a particular format, or somebody would do the paintings in a very impressionist manner. So you should know, you should be able to segregate between different imageries and styles of painting as well. So over here, let's talk about action painting. So sometimes it's also called as gestural abstraction, means it is based on your gestures. Okay, this style of painting in which paint is spontaneously dribbled, splashed, or smeared onto the canvas rather than being carefully applied. The resulting work often emphasizes the physical act of painting itself as an essential aspect of the finished work or concern of its artist. So, it talks more about the gestures and the physical act of the painter, like whether the person is splashing the color on the canvas in a very rigorous manner, whether the painter is, putting colors in his or her hands and, smudging it on the canvas. So it is more to do with what sort of an action the person is, doing. What is the act? Whether it's a very rigorous or a vigorous movement, or quick strokes, or dribbling, splashing. So it normally gives a very abstract sort of a outcome. Okay, the outcome is not very specific. It's not like you are painting a flower or you're painting a portrait where you have to take care of how you are applying the color and how the light is forming or what sort of texture you have to make. Here it is more fun, more spontaneous, and the result is very, very abstract. Okay, so please keep in mind that this sort of painting is called action painting. Also, do a little homework. Try and find out what exactly the name of this particular painting is, who did it, who were the other renowned painters who were known for action painting, right? These are the things that students you need to find it out and study. And also try, please remember that there is another word given over here which is called drip painting. Do not get confused over here, because drip painting is also a form of action painting. But over here, only the dripping method is used. It's not smudging or stamping or splashing the color on the canvas, but only dripping. So you need to know the difference and do not get confused. Again, if you have practiced and studied about these particular topics, then it's really going to be a cakewalk for all of you. Okay, so again, we have a very, very famous artwork over here. This is actually a fresco work. Okay, so this type of artwork belongs to a particular style. You need to identify what the style is. The options are Renaissance, medieval, Tudor, and Roman. So the correct answer is Renaissance. This is a very, very famous painting, not a painting, but a fresco work, which is a type of mural. Try and find out what is this technique of fresco is all about. And the name of this particular artwork is the School of Athens. Okay, it's by a very, very famous Italian Renaissance artist called Raphael. The fresco was painted between 1509 and 1511. Do read about the other important work done by Raphael and who were the other contemporaries in that particular era. This particular era, Renaissance era, is one of the most important era of your history of art. Okay, so please do not ignore it and read about it. And moving ahead, knowing a little bit more about this particular artwork. So it depicts a congregation of philosophers, mathematicians, and scientists from ancient Greece, including Plato, Aristotle, Pythagoras, Archimedes, and Heraclius. The Italian artist Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo are also featured in this painting, shown as Plato and Heraclitus, so respectively. The painting notably features accurate perspective projection, a defining characteristics of the Renaissance era. Raphael learned perspective from Leonardo, whose role as Plato is central in the painting. So, before the Renaissance era is also known as the revival. Okay, the Renaissance period in European history, marking the transition from Middle Ages to modernity and covering the 15th and the 16th century, characteristics by efforts to revive and surpass ideas and achievement of classical antiquity. So this particular era saw a great movement in terms of mathematics, architecture, painting, art, philosophy, right? And different scientists came up in this particular era. So this era, Renaissance era, is also known as the era of revival. So read about it, read about the important artists, and try and identify the artwork. And this was the era where your perspective drawing was developed. Also see who was the one who came up with the whole technique of perspective drawing, right? Perspective drawing is a sort of a mathematical calculation that is done to depict a 3D space on a 2D surface. So the paper or the wall all our canvases are all 2D. They are 2D surface, and accurately depicting a 3D perspective needs a certain amount of calculations and need a certain amount of technique. So this particular technique was developed in the Renaissance era, and it took a great turn, and that's how architecture and other sciences also developed in that particular era. Okay, so moving ahead, the next image that we are seeing on our screen, okay, identify the four most important visual principles in the given two-dimensional black and white composition. So again, we see a composition which is 2D. Okay, this is not really a 3D image. This is more 2D. Why? Because we see that shapes are very predominant over here, right? So this composition is definitely a 2D composition. And let's see what are the four important visual principles that define this particular image. So the answer is A, B, D, G. First is balance. Now I won't say that there is a symmetrical balance over here. There's more of a asymmetrical balance over here. So if I divide my image vertically, into two halves, then I see that the visual weight is somewhat similar, but it's not identical, right? And that's why it makes this particular image asymmetrically balanced image. So they haven't given I think they haven't given the option of asymmetrical, right? They have just given balance, and there is a third option over here which says symmetry. So please, you have to judge yourself what are the options all about. So again, symmetry is part of balance, right? But I am not going to choose symmetry because even though it's balance, it's asymmetrical balance. Okay. Then the next option says focal point. Yeah, we do have focal point. So your eyes are going here. A focal point, interesting focal point has been created in the center in the form of the halo, and the eyes are actually going right there rather than going towards any other element first. Then there's a very high contrast. We have just used two colors over here. White and black is here, and moreover, there is a play of foreground and the background. Okay, so there's a lot of play of the negative and the positive area with the way the black color has been used. So these are the visual principles. Your balance, focal point, um, contrast, and foreground and background are the most important visual principles in this particular image. Okay, moving ahead. Again, we have to identify four most important visual principles from given in this black and white photograph. Okay, and what do we see over here? There is this particular photograph, and this talks about the visual elements that we have over here. Is the first one is depth. Okay, there is no foreground and background over here, and I have given some examples, right, to support what I'm saying. There is no foreground and background over here, but I have given an example for you where you understand that the foreground, which is this black area, and the background is the leftover. They both are interacting in a way that there is a figure that is forming. So there's a very strong play of foreground and background in this particular image. Then I have given you an example of datum, okay, where you have a particular line. Now remember in that image where we saw a 3D form in red and green, which somewhere symbolizes like an abstract rhino, right? There we had a line. So that is the datum line which supports, particular elements and goes through certain elements. Then we have depth over here. Distortion is also here. I have given you an example of distortion, pattern, and texture. Now let's see what are the options, what are the right options. So it is depth, it is distortion. Why distortion? Can you see very minutely? Can you see there's a little bit of disruption happening in the pattern? There is a disruption happening in the pattern over here. So that's distortion. That's the visual principle of distortion that has been used. Maybe the artist or the photographer had something in mind. That's why they have used this particular principle over here. Then we have pattern. Definitely, there's a very strong pattern which is present in this particular photograph, and followed by repetition. So wherever you have pattern, you will have, repeating a particular element at a specific interval, and you have contrast. So we can simply see a contrast of black and white. So hence, that forms an important visual principle. I hope you understand